Well, I'm going to kick back here on the podcast and launch into our campfire series. And our first guest in this new edition of the podcast is none other than St. Louis County Rescue Squad Captain Rick Slatten. Hello, Rick.
Good evening.
We're up here in Cooke County tonight.
Beautiful suburban Grand Marais in Cooke County.
We got the neighbor running the chainsaw.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like Possum Lodge with red green. You
The old red green show.
Yeah, we just need someone firing off a shotgun in the other direction there.
You know, red green show was, I was born and raised watching that show. And it's the guy with the beard. That's the show with the guy with the beard and the hat, and they make one-liners and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a classic show.
Oh, and he had that 40 grit voice there. If the women don't find you handsome, they should at least find you handy there, Harold. And, keep your stick on the ice.
That's exactly it. Yes, red green show. So we're kind of striking that vibe tonight, maybe.
Yeah.
What we're going for, and just the way the cookie crumbled for us this evening. But what brings you to Cooke County, Rick? What's going on up here?
I gave a talk at the 2025 Cooke County Emergency Management Conference. Mike Keyport puts that on up here, and asked if I could give a talk on search tactics. And so that was my afternoon.
Okay. And who attends this, or what's the...
Oh, it's everything from firefighters, ambulance medics, other emergency managers, a lot of people, people on the regional planning staff, things like that.
Okay. And overall, how'd it go, or what was the takeaway, or anything like that?
Oh, it was good. I mean, it's always nice to get out and teach. I mean, I used to do that a lot when Debbie was alive, and now I don't do it so much. But
Your wife?
Yeah.
Debbie. And she passed away now, has it been?
23 months last Tuesday.
And so you were teaching at the conference?
Yes, yep.
What was your specific presentation or class?
It was kind of I call it Search Proficient Light. It's because a full proficient search tactics class would be 16 hours. And obviously I didn't have that time this weekend because there are many, many speakers in short blocks for this conference. So try to hit the major concepts to help people avoid pitfalls when they're firing up a missing person search.
Mm-hmm. And do the people in this course have any experience with search and rescue? Or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Cooke County Search and Rescue's there, and they've been around the block on this. Cooke County gets a lot of activity.
In the boundary waters and that type of stuff.
Yeah, Boundary Waters, Gunflint Trail, and of course Lake Superior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you know most of the people at the conference when you show up to something like this?
Well, I've seen them, I recognize them, but I'm terrible with names. It's kind of funny because my audience, when I teach, they only need to remember one name, and I got to remember all of them, and I fail at it miserably.
I see. Well, I mean, obviously, Rick Slatten, for the podcast listeners, and you've been on a few times now, different episodes, and most of those related to different search and rescue things that have occurred. I've been down at the squad headquarters there near Duluth, Hermantown, a couple times. We've done some audio in there.
Mm-hmm.
So people who listen to this podcast probably have an idea of who Rick Slatten is, and if not, from Last Entry Point, the book, you and I worked extensively on that for a couple years. So
I got to give you a plug though.
Yeah.
We were down in, some of your listeners might be aware of it, we were down in Patsu, which is in Douglas County. We mutualated over there for a missing child. And I was walking from the command post. I was hangry. I'd had nothing but junk food all day, and I needed something substantial. So I was walking across the parking lot towards, they had sloppy joes and brats and stuff set up in a tavern. We were in the parking lot for our base camp, and this guy came up to me, and I had my work shirt on, which has my name on it, and he grabbed my shirt to straighten it out so he could read the name, and he says, "I read about you in a book."
And he was talking last.
He was
entry
talking
point?
last entry point, yeah.
Wow.
So
Over in Wisconsin.
yeah,
huh?
you're getting around, brother.
Well, that's that's cool that people are recognizing you through that. And I mean, I think really, Rick, when the book was one thing and our podcast is one thing, but the situation at Curtin Falls,
We're coming up on a year.
coming right up on a year now, and that's in the Boundary Waters. It was the most high-profile search and rescue effort, certainly in the wilderness, in the Boundary Waters, maybe ever, probably ever, I would imagine. 18 days, I think it was.
Yep.
So for both the length of it and the fact that you had Starlink and you guys could do some updates in there, and you and I did that update when you took a break. You did 2 different stints over those 18 days, and we touched base about halfway through, and that
Right.
and it's not about the ratings. I'm just signifying the interest in this situation. We got a lot of people that listened to that, and there was great interest in this situation at Curtin Falls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the magnitude, the scale, the scope, the fact that 2 people were presumed dead, ultimately were found dead, but it was an unknown.
Yeah,
right?
and 2 critically injured that had been evacuated out.
Yeah.
It was intense.
So as we come up on a year and we're getting into the paddling season, I mean, the Boundary Water's just up the hill from us here, and people are going to be getting into canoes and on the water soon. The ice is coming out. I don't want to get into what should we keep in mind and get into PFDs and safety stuff.
Well, we certainly can, because I feel obligated to give a plug on it. Is we've had in the history of the rescue squad now we're up to 513 water fatalities, and 499 of them were not wearing life jackets. Mm-hmm. And we think there's a connection. We hope the listeners do too.
Yeah.
That it's the one single act that can turn a tragedy into a campfire story.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's almost just like, I hope we don't have to keep saying it. We will, we can. But put on your PFD, wear it. We're talking about really cold water, dangerous water here as we start the paddling season and as we end it as well. And but up here in the Boundary Waters, it's cold all the time, basically.
Yeah. Which I don't know if the microphone picked it up, but my phone is blowing up in my pocket. The squad down in Duluth is getting paged right now.
They are.
And it looks like, I can get what it is, but it's somewhere up north. North Squad's taking it.
Okay.
And,
is it in the wilderness? You can look if you want to. Because you want to go respond.
Looks like an ATV accident.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not in the wilderness, obviously, unless they're breaking the law. But
that's how quick it happens.
Yeah, that's how quick it happens. And my response time would be a little long, so I think I'll stay here around the fire and talk to you.
All right. Well, we hope whoever it is, they're all right.
Oh, yeah.
When you got the call to go to Curtin Falls, do you remember the call?
Yeah, it was the first day of the air show. So we had a major first aid standby operation laid on to cover the Duluth Air Show. And this came in on the afternoon of day 1. Mm-hmm. And so we covered the air show, but we mobilized, these types of calls are all hands on deck operations. Any member that's free, we expect you to go. And so we were able to cover both operations effectively. And then just due to distance, it's about as deep as you can go in the Boundary Waters.
Yeah.
And so we ended up spiking out for 18 days.
And what did the call say, like when it came in? Do you remember what the alert was, or what the dispatch or whomever was telling you, or what the call was?
It was 2 canoes swept over the falls, 2 unaccounted for, and 2 injured.
Mm-hmm. And that happened because somebody else paddled up. There was like a separate party that.
Yeah, I don't remember the particulars
on
on how they linked up, but yeah, there was another party close by that linked up, had enough cell coverage that a very scratchy phone call made it to 911.
Mm-hmm. And did you go in there on that initial response?
No, that was Pete and Zach and Christian and Scotty, they went in, and of course the DNR Grace Zeller did a phenomenal job with her Little Bird helicopter plucking out the 2 injured. And I mean that's an evolution for the ages there. That was some serious. I mean, that was some cast iron courage there, getting into that tight spot and getting those 2 people out of there.
And what time of day was this, Rick, when that first came in, the alert?
Oh, I think it was late afternoon. Sometime around the dinner hour.
Okay. And so that they get the 2 out, and there's your part of your crew's in there.
Yep.
But what happens, after that, or when do you get out there?
Well, we're kind of reliving it here. It rained every single day. Rained every day we were out there.
Yep.
And we were leaning very heavily on Jeremy with the Forest Service Beaver out of Ely.
Mm-hmm.
And we did send some people in by way of Anderson's from Crane Lake, and those were, that's a 2-hour boat ride, and then we'll call it a frisky portage, and then some more short boat ride to get into Curtin Falls. And those are your paddlers who've gone that route. I'm sure they're well familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't remember all the numbers on it, but it was over 10,000 pounds of gear that we shuttled in and out. But it was always questionable. We never knew if we were going to get a bird the next day to either bring people in, bring out, bring supplies in, supplies out. So we ate everything from MREs, which for our veterans that are listening, that's 3 lies in 1 acronym. It's not a meal, it's not ready, and you can't eat it. But we were eating those, and of course dehydrated food, and we had some luxury meals shipped in throughout the day. We ate steaks one night.
Oh, nice.
But
nice.
Yeah, it was quite an experience.
Do you all talk about it now?
Absolutely.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
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 And what are those conversations like?
It's mostly revisiting, and I use this word a lot, the magic. And maybe that's too overused now and I should find a different word, but that operation built teams. Teams are not built by shared cushiness. You don't build what is it? It's one of the proverbs that iron sharpens iron, and we sharpened each other out there. And that's most of what conversations these days around the pizza table entail, is looking back with fondness. Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy, but we made friends. We made friends with an entire church community down in the cities.
From Reese's.
Yeah,
Reese
I still
Ranch?
talk. I still talk to Angie occasionally, and
Reese's widow.
yeah, and but it's in the face of this tragedy, there was a lot of good that happened, and that's what we look back on and savor.
And good from the perspective of you guys learned things, or just this camaraderie, this teamsmanship that was built? Or?
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah, it forged a deeper team, a deeper understanding. We learned, we innovated, we laughed.
Even out while you were out there?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Hollywood. I think Hollywood would paint this picture that these tragedies, that you approach all sober and stoic and somber, and if you can't find humor in misery, you'll go crazy, and I think of that scene. It's an old, again, you got to be an old listener to remember this, Romancing the Stone with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner, where, he's just lost everything he owns in a mudslide, and he gets up, he says, well, this turned out to be one hell of a morning, and he's smiling, and Kathleen Turner tells him, you lost everything. He says, not my sense of humor. And sometimes you're just so miserable, it's funny.
And, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And anybody that's ever capsized a canoe and then recovered and drove on, like you did a couple of years ago.
Fishing opener a few years ago,
Yeah.
Yep.
Is you fish out, you have your adrenaline dump, you cry or you vomit or you get the shakes or whatever comes in the aftermath of almost losing your life, and then you dry your gear out and drive on.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
there's something to savor in that.
And that's interesting to hear that was happening in real time. I mean, we haven't talked about that on the podcast. I don't think you've ever spoken about it publicly, about that even in the midst of it, that exists. Not just these post-op, a year later reflection, we can look back and see it. You were seeing it in real time. People were laughing around the camp.
Oh, yeah, and there's a story. It's Sophie, who's one of our members. She's one of our team leaders, just an incredible human being.
We've had it. We did the...
Yeah, you interviewed Sophie, and she's kind of like a quasi-adopted daughter for me. I mean, I just love her to pieces. But she talks about how, because the campsites, the individual campsites where our tents were set up, were on different levels of elevation, because the portage is climbing a hill and there was a short upgrade, so we had tents on top and tents in the middle and tents on the bottom. And I was in the middle, and I have a one-person bivvy hut. I don't have it anymore. And then I had a mummy bag. Well, I'm 62 years old, and your older listeners can relate to what a 62-year-old's prostate is like, and I got to get out of bed in the middle of the night 3 times to pee.
Yeah.
And I guess I had the entire campsite in stitches with me cussing as I got out of that mummy bag to get out of that shelter to crawl out and go in the woods 3 times in a night. And
those are tight quarters, though.
Yeah, I mean, just note to your listeners is that one-man bivvies are designed for 20-year-olds. They're not designed for 60. So North Pete Brodigam, who was just an anchor out there. He did way above and beyond the call of duty, but he turned me on to that 6 Moon Luna. Single pole, 1.5, get your gear in, nice vestibule. I went out and bought one like 3 days after I got back from Curtin Falls. Okay, this bivvy's going in the trash. And
yeah, they made some advancements in that type of
yeah.
I'm Gwen at Drury Lane Books, the bookstore here in Grand Marais. So a year ago, Joe Frederick's book Last Entry Point came out. These true stories of danger and death in the Boundary Waters. It was a top seller of 2024. We shipped it to many of you Paddle and Portage listeners around the country. And of course, there was lots of folks coming into the bookstore getting ready to go out into the woods, and they want some local reading often. So congratulations, Joe, to the first year with Last Entry Point, and we're always happy to be able to sell local stories here at Drury Lane.
Almost 50 years ago, a group of friends met at a diner and began to organize a movement. They formed a group dedicated to preserving the pristine waters and forests of northeastern Minnesota. Through grassroots organizing, they helped pass the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness Act, which protected the Boundary Waters for future generations. Today, that organization, Friends of the Boundary Waters, continues its work to protect, preserve, and restore this cherished wilderness. Whether it's through fighting toxic mining proposals at the edge of the Boundary Waters, or introducing the next generation to the wonders of the BWCA, our strength is in our members. It is in you. To learn more and find out how you can join this community today, please visit www.friends-bwca.org.
What type of cigar are you enjoying there, I should ask?
This one's a Fuentes. It's not in my top 7, but
Fuentes is the...
Arturo Fuentes. It's one of the original Cuban families that got chased out by Castro in the Revolution, and they set up shop in the Dominican Republic, and now they still make outstanding cigars. And I enjoy a good dog turd once, at the end of the day.
So when you're out at Curtin Falls, are you guys having a campfire, guy? The team. I say guys, I mean the squad, which is men and women. Are you all sitting around a fire like this and having a cigar?
We did. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had there was. Because of the size of the search area, I mean, it spanned a great linear distance, plus you had land on both the Canadian and U.S. sides that needed to be searched. And we had 5 sorties. I can't list them for you. I could list a couple, I guess, but that had to be done first thing in the morning and had to be done just before we went to bed. And then through the course of the day, we had special sorties. American Eddy was just a royal pain in our backside. It was this violent whirlpool that we just couldn't get access to. And but at the end of the day, we would appoint a cheese. We called him the Big Cheese. And the Big Cheese would decide, okay, when are we officially off the clock?
Mm-hmm.
And now let's light a fire and gather around and tell jokes and war stories and what have you, and kind of decompress from the day in preparation for going to bed.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that was a nightly thing.
Not in the early days, but later on, as we knew, we're in this for the long haul, and as the camp got established, then we started to kick into that routine.
And why did it take so long? Why were you unable to find Reese and Jesse? Because you had a pretty good idea where they were, right?
We couldn't get in there.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember, if those that followed us on Facebook through that time, we were posting 2 photos of the day per day. One kind of featured a member, and the other was kind of a recap or a kind of a highlight of what we did during that day. And that water was so violent, there was just places we couldn't get to. And it took us a while. And what really made it frustrating, and I told you about this before, is that we had this depth gauge. It was a little red rock. It was shaped like a pyramid. And I'd watch the water level go up and down by how much of that pyramid was sticking out of the water. And, I'd get up in the morning and it's, 1 inch is showing. And over the course of the day, the water level would go down. Okay, now it's 2 inches and 3 inches, 4 inches. But the thing is that water course, it's kind of like when flash floods happen in wadis in the desert, is you can have a rainstorm 5, 10, 15, 20 miles away, but it makes your river go up. Mm-hmm. So we'd get up in the morning and the pyramid is submerged again. And you just, man, we just couldn't win with that rain.
Because it could rain over on Sag or...
Absolutely.
And, and that would, maybe it's not raining over Crooked or Iron, but it would rain and make its way there and find you the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. And we had a lot of rain last May in that stretch.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. And are you in contact at all with the family? I think one of the last times we had you on the podcast, you had come from the funeral of Reese, I believe.
Well, Angie's doing a celebration of life for Reese here on the 1-year anniversary, and we're sending a contingent down to attend that.
Is that in the cities or
in the cities? Yeah.
Okay.
I think Bethany's a little more private a person, but we check in on her from time to time.
Jesse's widow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Do you think that this reshaped how the squad will respond to a call in the Boundary Waters this summer? Is there any of that's been discussed, or just?
No, I don't think Curtain Falls by itself is an acute catalyst to spark improvement in any great way in the rescue squad. I think what's more is we've had a lot of complex calls in the last 18 months. I mean, in the same year we had calls that were the most complex call in our history. And it's really got us focused on just elevating our game incrementally that much more in every respect. You look at how command is run now. You look at how data gathering and management is run. You look at how we run our mapping software, how we fly our drones, how we operate our canines. And it's just, the Japanese word is kaizen. It's continuous improvement, which, by the way, is the name of the dog that Debbie and I used to have. That's what we named our puppy, because he keeps getting better. And that's kind of what the word translates to. And that's what we're trying to do. It's not driven by any one call. I mean, obviously, after every call, we do a hot wash and after action review, and we identify things that could go better. But those are special cause variation. They're not common cause variation. But on the common cause side, we're just incrementally improving our game. We do data management a lot better than we did 2 years ago. and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe not even from the sense of how can we continually improve, which is great to hear. Obviously, that you don't feel you've arrived somewhere. You're always looking to get better, but that the squad might be prepared that if you've got a call deep in the boundary waters, you might not be home for dinner tonight or tomorrow night.
Oh yeah,
In that sense, that this could be any of those calls could be long haul.
right. In fact, I guess that's one specific improvement that came out of Curtin Falls is we teach what I teach when I'm on the road doing proficient search is I carry 3 packs. I have 3 different packs. So I have what I call my supported search pack, which because I'm a human tracker, most of the sorties that I run, I can see the base camp. So I know I'm coming out tonight. So it's light. It's very light because ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. And then we have our unsupported search pack, and we're going in the boundary waters and I don't know when I'm coming out. And between North Pete and we have improved the recommended pack list for our members. And I went out and bought a new unsupported search pack, and I've configured mine differently from what Pete is learning from Pete, and Pete's made improvements to him based on me, what I've recommended. So the membership, what they put in their individual pack, we learned a lot. That I don't need this, but I need more of that. And so that's one thing that directly came out of Curtin Falls.
Okay.
Boy, you're gonna spark me to look at me. I look like it's snowing here.
And did you have anybody that after Curtin or after any call for that matter just says this isn't for me? This is more emotionally taxing or
No.
time demanding or anything like that?
No, that does happen in the rescue squad, but it happens more at the applicant level. Is people apply to us, we bring them in for a meet and greet so we can, kind of give them a first impression once over. Then they're invited to the active applicant phase, and at that point we get several people who, no, I didn't realize the time commitment, I didn't realize what this all entails, and this isn't for me. So that does happen, but I don't think you don't see it at the veteran level.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like Curtin Falls was the peak of. You've been doing this for a long time, Rick. Your father started one of the people that got involved with the origins of the St. Louis County Rescue
He
Squad.
started it in 1958.
It's in your DNA. You've been doing it, and then everything led to that was such a. Not just the publicity, not just the attention, not the length. It was like it had it all. It was complex. There was a lot of unknowns. It was such a
Yeah, but
thing.
That happens a lot. I mean, we've since I lost Debbie, I've become, my relationship with God has gotten a lot closer. He's not left my side for 1 second since I lost Debbie. But when it comes to rescue squad, God gives us a chance to shine. Because if this were easy, anybody could do it. But not everybody can do it. The 95 members in that unit can do it.
And you've got all ages of people. I mean, when I met Sophie's probably in her 20s. I think
she just turned 21.
Yeah, right.
And we just our North First Lieutenant, who's third in command of the unit, is 20 years old.
Wow.
And she's the youngest officer in the history of the squad, and she is rocking it. And it's not about hard skills. It's not being able to do this or do that or have this certification or been to that class. It has nothing to do with that, because there is not one skill in the rescue squad that is not present there on somebody. So if we need a talent, somebody in the squad's got it. What we want in our leadership is the ability to inspire others to greatness. The ability to get people to recognize that they are part of something greater than themselves. And that's what I want in a leader. That's what I try to be in a leader. I try to grow that in up-and-coming leaders. And that's what makes this unit magic and sets it apart from a lot of others out there.
Wow. And so at that young to be third in command, and what are some of those attributes that you're, like, what is an example that you could tell us about what makes somebody that
Well,
right fit?
it boils down to servant leadership. It's those kids don't work for me. I'm the captain, I'm the top dog, but they don't work for me, I work for them. And my job is to remove obstacles, to encourage them, to give them, to lay out for them an environment where they can excel. And to be inspirational and not authoritarian.
As you can tell, my neighbor is really just having a
Yeah, this is really Possum Lodge here. We
go down there.
still waiting for that shotgun blast. Yeah.
With the spruce budworm around Cooke County, people are starting to take down some trees, and that's part of living in the woods, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things about living up here in a place like Cooke County or St. Louis County, those far reaches, that I think people have a romanticized idea about what it's like. And you know, here we are, it's a gorgeous evening, but
And no bugs.
but they're coming,
They're coming. And
you know.
yeah.
So you got chainsaws in the early part of spring and May. And then you got your bugs coming, and then it's winter again.
Yeah, it's I predict, of course I'm no scientist in this realm, but it's going to be a bad tick season. Because we just did a mutual aid search out in Aiken County, and it was kind of funny. The average tick count for a day's work in the woods was two per person, except for Megan. She's one of our members, and that girl must have sweet blood because she picked off 50.
Wow.
So she either stood in a hatch or they smell good blood on her.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, we were kind of giving her some raspberries about that one.
How do you guys deal with when you're out on a search, and either at Curtin Falls or where you're out for a little bit of time in the evenings? You're out where you're dealing with, you know, swamps and bugs, and I mean that seems it's very unpleasant for the recreationists going into the boundary waters. I'm sure it's no more pleasant for you all.
It's the same as what all your paddlers do. It's bug dope and head nets and embrace the suck. We just did an advanced auto X training last Thursday night, and it was raining, and it wasn't like a cow peeing on a flat rock raining. It was that ground drenching, gets you all the way to your bones, drought ending storm. We're out cutting cars apart, and everybody's soaking wet, and they're loving it. You know, I think it's in the human condition. Nobody likes getting wet, but if you get a little practice at it, you don't mind being wet. And once everybody's soaked, okay, here we are. You know, we're miserable. Embrace it, love it, get the job done.
And that's probably where some of that teamsmanship is built, is like, we're in the suck together. This is awful, but I'm doing it with my friend, somebody I can count on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that dynamic of the squad it seems to be pretty unique. I mean, I know with the Gunflint crew it exists, and talking with people like Micah Valentini, who you went on.
Oh yeah, yep.
Minnesota Public Radio and did that show with it, that it exists there. We hear about the groups, you know, people are bringing up meals, or they're gathering for a meal before they go in, or it's a warm meal's waiting for them when they come out. We hear about those scenarios, but it seems really quite robust with the St. Louis County squad.
Oh yeah, and that's a part that needs to get talked about too. Is you have your field teams, whoever rolled with the page, so they end up on the pointy end of the spear. But it's also the willingness, you know, because we'll throw a Snapchat or a page out for what we call a B crew, and those are the ones that we get back and everything's dirty, one or two things are broken, and everybody's hangry. And we show up and dinner's there, the pizza oven's going. There's dino nuggets in the air fryer, and somebody's got a bucket of soapy water and a pressure washer ready to clean this gear. And it's so fulfilling to watch that, to watch that dynamic of members taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm. How is the media treating you these days?
It's good. We're, me personally, I don't like the short form interview anymore, and I owe you a note of thanks for that, because one of the beautiful things about doing a podcast like this is you ask a question and then you let me talk until I'm done. And obviously mainstream media, particularly broadcast journalism, doesn't allow that to happen. And why is it that Joe Rogan's podcast is the most popular podcast on the planet? Why is that? Because he's an authentic individual who truly wants to know what his guest has to tell him. Mm-hmm. And I hear this crap about Gen Z doesn't have any attention span and they don't want to volunteer and all. Okay, but they'll listen to a podcast for 3 hours. So
right.
That doesn't make sense.
Uh-huh.
And
well, I remember.
But I like the long form, because these are the questions you ask, and even the science and the art of search and rescue. These things are too nuanced to be captured in a soundbite.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing to be able to be asked a question and talk until I'm done.
And I ask about the media because I know during Curtin and after, there were so many people reaching out to you, trying to get you on their show. I think at one point you were asking, did you give my phone number to Kathy Wurzer? Rick, it wasn't me. The people were looking to chat with you.
Yeah. And I get it. I don't want to throw a hatchet down range at broadcast journalism. You've got a job to do. You've got 30 minutes to do it, which ends up being 24 when you take out the commercials. And the A block is 12 minutes long, and you got to get the evening news out. And I get it. I studied journalism in school.
Yep, that's right.
But it's sometimes you can't answer it. In fact, most times you can't answer it in a soundbite.
Mm-hmm. But you feel that, because we do a lot of the Boundary Waters related things is what you and I typically are connecting about. But obviously the squad is responding to a lot more than that you and I aren't talking about. But I think that the Duluth TV news is from suicides to car accidents to those types of scenarios that aren't in the Paddle and Portage wheelhouse, but
right.
They are in the Duluth media wheelhouse. So you're engaging with media far beyond just Boundary Waters search and rescue.
True that. Yeah.
And so that's why I check in with it to see how it's going, because now that they probably got your number or know how to get a hold of you in a way that maybe they didn't before Curtin Falls.
And it's important to remember that the media has a job to do in society. It's a noble goal. There's no government scandal, no nefarious, sinister scheme would see the light of day if it weren't for American journalism, and some of that's print news, some of that's broadcast, some of that is podcast. And you have an important job, and we in not just in the rescue squad, but in the entire emergency services realm, we want you to get that story right. We want you to get it right. Because Hollywood and the media, and I talked about this in class today when I was teaching, is that where does the public get their perception of search and rescue? From Hollywood and the media. And Hollywood, my goodness, CSI Miami, that redheaded David Caruso dude, with the sunglasses, he set search and rescue back 20 years because it's nothing on that show is done the way search and rescue is truly carried out. And so we want to get the correct stuff. We want to get the right stuff out in the public eye.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hey everyone, my name is Mitch Riem. I'm the owner of Northern Goods in downtown Grand Marais. We are a wilderness supply store, and a cooperator with the Forest Service for issuing Boundary Waters permits this summer. And so for those of you who are trying to navigate with all the changes of where permits can be picked up and how your trip is going to look this summer, we just wanted to introduce ourselves, invite you to come stop in the store, whether you just need a permit or whether you want to grab some kind of provisions and gear on your way in. Just want you to know that we are here. So a lot of folks, even like Joe and Baxley here at Paddle and Portage, pick up their permits before heading into the Boundary Waters as their journey kicks off. And so if you are looking for what your trip is going to look like this summer and are still kind of firming up some of the details of where you want that last stop to be on your way in, just know we would love to help get you your permit. If you need to shop and grab a few last minute things, we've got a store full of wilderness gear, but we want you to have a great experience in the Boundary Waters, and we're here to help.
Dan and Karen Cooke founded Cooke Custom Sewing 40 years ago. Their son Nathan may have begun sewing before he could walk. Regardless, he grew up amid the clacking rattle of sewing machines creating outdoor gear. Nathan had already taken over CCS when cancer claimed Dan last summer. He is continuing the family tradition of creating functional camping equipment engineered to last a lifetime. I've always loved the tagline, locally sewn, globally tested, because it embodies Cooke Custom Sewing. CCS gear has been on every continent, but it's all made right here in Minnesota by people that love the outdoors and are making living wages. Whether you're headed to the BWCA or the Arctic, you can rely on CCS. And I should let you know that my name is Bear Paulson from both North Star Canoes and Paddle and Portage. I've known the Cooke family for more than 3 decades, and I have CCS gear that has lasted 30 years to prove it. Check out all the canoe packs and packing systems, the ultra-lightweight tarps and shelters, and plenty of other great gear at cookecustomsewing.com.
I remember when I first reached out to you for Last Entry Point, I had Tom Crossman, who used to be the captain, right? And he's still
the
around.
finest. He is the finest side scan and ROV operator on the planet, and that's not hyperbole to say that. He pioneered a lot of what is mainstream practice today in underwater recovery technology and practice. And
yeah. But so I knew how to get a hold of Tom from another story I had done about water-related sonar things, and not even necessarily search and rescue. And then I got your contact from him. And your first response was sort of like, first of all, it took a long time. But then it was still even like, who are you, and what do you want from, what's this book you're supposedly writing type tone. But we then some hours long conversations got us kind of going down this path that we're on now.
Yeah.
And I'll forever be appreciative of that, Rick. And I think that
you're very welcome.
And it's not just for me, but so that people, as you're describing, have a better understanding of search and rescue, and that it's not, okay, someone's missing over there. Let's say my neighbor went missing tonight. We're not just going to go bumbling off into the woods. There's science and data.
Yeah. The Hollywood media. I'll stop picking on media now. But the general public perception of searching is line patterns and bloodhounds. That's what Get 200 people shoulder to shoulder. Send them through the woods, and if they trip over something, it must be important to us. And yeah, we do line patterns too, but they're scientifically modulated based on the environment, the target, and the resource that's doing it. And there's a lot of science involved in this. And we experienced this, that search in Patsoo over in Douglas County, is if you look up the story, read the comment section on Facebook, is
what's the story?
Public citizens, just a 12-year-old boy that went missing, and social media got a hold of it pretty quickly, and no surprise there. That's the nature of discourse today. But right away you start seeing comments that, what do you mean law enforcement doesn't want spontaneous volunteers? What do you mean? And that's negligent. I mean, just scathing and vehement comments about why don't they want as many people as they can possibly get. Well, I'll tell you why is if I've got 200 civilians on site, now I've got to peel off trained search technicians to chaperone those people going through the woods. And with the human tracking capability, the drone capability, the canine capability we have, there's a lot of evidence destruction that goes on when you do something like that. If you're going to put a line pattern in there, you've just ruined it for the trackers. You may or may not ruin it for the dogs. And I hope the public one day understands that, that there's better ways to solve this problem than simply throwing more people at it.
Yeah, I see. So did you find this?
Absolutely.
12-year-old?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And
He was fine.
Have you ever had a situation where you're trying to find someone and they don't want to be found?
Oh yeah.
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Absolutely.
Really? And how do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
You know, and I'm going to pick on your male listeners out here.
Uh-huh.
Men don't get lost, because lost is a 4-letter word. They get turned around. They get twisted up. They get confused. Men do not get lost. And I can say that because I'm a man, and I am uniquely qualified to pick on the male gender. And men don't get lost. So we call them, there's a unit in our class that we teach, it's called the doofus effect. And one of the forms of doofuses that's out there is the guy whose ego refuses to let him admit he is lost and needs help. And we've had, like, back in the big deer hunting days, which we rarely get a missing deer hunter nowadays. But back when we were out 7 of the 9 days in the late 70s, early 80s, we had a guy run away from us. He consciously avoided us, he sneaked around us so that he could find his own way out of the woods.
So just
I got to back up. That fire's a furnace.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you look cold, Rick, so I wanted you to be comfortable. So he did that out of pride, basically.
Yeah. And people might be curious, why don't we get more missing deer hunters today? Well, you think back then, what was a tree stand? You went out with your Sven saw and a hammer and a bag of nails, and you cut a popple tree down, and you made a deck and a bench, and maybe you threw a chunk of carpet on it and a ladder going up into it. Well, now people drive their ATV to the base of their tree. The stand is a house on stilts. It's got glass windows, a heater on, and a Packer game on. And when they get, say they shoot a deer and they're tracking it, and they find themselves turned around, they don't call 911, they call the shack. Fire a couple rounds off the deck so I can find you, and that's, deer hunters don't get lost like they did in the past. Usually it's, well, no, I don't want to say that, but it's often it is some kind of a medical event that causes us to go looking for a deer hunter.
Yeah. What are your most common calls to the Boundary Waters these days?
Well, you've got the accidental spot activation where somebody hits their spot device in their pack and doesn't know it. A lot of tenderfoot stuff that we didn't get years ago, and I've talked about this on previous podcasts, is the guy that he sets up on Lake 2 on the Fernberg corridor, and that's his base camp, but then he takes a water bottle and nothing else and heads into Lake 4, and then he drops his paddle. And wait a minute, dude, you're expedition grade camping and you don't have a spare paddle lashed in that canoe.
Yeah.
And
Drop, you mean lost?
Lost it, yeah. And so what does he do? He calls 911, bring me another paddle. Really? That's, we get a lot of tenderfeet, and I won't pick on, I'll leave it to your listeners to guess which state they're from, but we get paddlers they're windblown. That's not a 911 event. What do you do when you're windblown? You hunker down, you make an improvised campsite, and you wait for the winds to die. Yeah. That's what good paddlers ought to do. It's not a life-threatening event because you're not on your itinerary. And
what do you recommend to avoid that, where
it's just public education?
I mean, telling people, like, hey, I might be a day late, and don't panic if I am, because that seems like that would be pretty unnerving for a loved one back home.
I did that. I mean, I would do that to Debbie, and I would do it to my employer, because I did expedition grade camping for 20 years. And okay, if I'm not at work Monday morning, I didn't quit the company. I'm stuck out there due to weather, and I'll be back, and make those plans in advance.
Wow. Yeah, but that's kind of changed this day and age, between spots. I mean, there's stuff, even experienced hammock campers. This guy Shug that we've had on a few times, he's a YouTuber. His wife called Cooke County 911, was waiting for him at the parking lot off the Superior Hiking Trail because he was responding to text messages. He had service, and then all of a sudden he didn't have service. So she thought something happened, and she called.
You know what? That's a legitimate call.
Okay.
If geez, I had contact and now I don't, hey, that's a worthy call. We're going to go in there and investigate that.
Huh. It seems like a pretty fine line between abusing either the beacon or the cell phone and not.
It's a bell curve. And as long as you're solidly in the middle of the bell curve, you'll never get a complaint from me or anybody else. It's the outliers. It's the people who go into the woods who are dreadfully unprepared or unknowledgeable in what the wilderness is like. And like I've said on this podcast before, I don't go past a pit toilet without my day pack on. I plan as if something might happen and I got to hunker down away from camp for the night.
What are you thinking for this year? Anything that's going to be, condition based, that has your sensory going off, your concern, you're thinking about, hey,
no,
this variable is unique to this upcoming season or something?
No, it's again, it goes back to common cause versus special cause variation. The system of how Mother Nature treats the boundary waters, the volume of campers that go in there, all of those factors are in control, and you're going to have natural variation. Can't remember what the count was of our boundary waters missions last year, but I can guarantee you this year it's going to be different. It's either going to be more or it's going to be less, but the system is in control. I don't see any special cause factors out there, short of a monster forest fire that takes the rest of the blowdown.
Yep.
I don't see any special cause factors on the horizon for this year's paddling season. We do get a lot of questions. What are the cuts and the delays in funding
for the
Forest Service? Absolutely,
Sure.
I get questioned about that all the time.
Okay, and is there a link there at all, or
no? We're gonna go. It's not going to increase or decrease our response posture in the boundary waters because it's an auto-page protocol, and whether the Forest Service is fully staffed or skeleton staffed, the call is what it is, and we're going to send the appropriate resources to go get them.
do you work in conjunction with the Forest Service on responding to search and rescue calls?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So wouldn't that then be a link that if they have fewer people, that you would have you there?
But they'll always have somebody.
Uh-huh.
The boundary waters is not going to be unstaffed. It may be understaffed, but there's always going to be staff to work with. And there's rumors about what's going to happen to the beaver fleet in Ely, and okay, it is what it is. Right now, they're just rumors. We hear it every year that the Forest Service is going to cut the beaver fleet. Okay, I've been listening to that for 15 years. But if there are no beavers and I need an airplane, I'll get an airplane. I'll find an airplane. We got the DNR. We've got private parties. If I need a plane, I'll get one.
Yeah.
And
you've worked with a private party out of Ely, right? Isn't there somebody over there?
Used to be. Adventure Airplanes was out of Tower, and
That's right.
and they pulled out of Minnesota. I think they moved their operation up to Alaska.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. What about, and you had helicopters too at Curtin, right? Or they were bringing in the boats, and
Yeah, and
so that's an option too.
we're working the higher level of leadership at the state level. Curtin Falls was a wake-up call for them.
Yeah.
Because I called, and then Jake Stakovich, who was my first lieutenant up north, we were on the phone with the state in the opening hours of Curtin Falls, and I knew the asset that I needed, and I know what the resources capabilities are. And I need a night flying resource with hoist capability, which means a Black Hawk out of the National Guard in St. Cloud or Ripley. And I was told no. And they tried to push us into another asset. And well, that caused, the aftermath of Curtain Falls was a real wake-up call for the state. Now, we're working on enhancing those relationships to smooth the process to get the resource that we need when we need it, whether it's the Coast Guard out of Traverse City with their Jayhawk, whether it's a Black Hawk, whether it's the St. Paul Mart team. But not everybody's this way, and I'm not claiming any extra credit for it, but St. Louis County, we get enough activity in the boundary waters, and I know the capabilities of the resources, and I know what I need. And when I call a duty officer and I say, this is what I need, I don't want you to give me something I don't need. And we're working on that. And the state is committed to improving that response posture.
Mm-hmm. Have you been out on calls like recently? Any stories that you could share? Or,
it's been busy, but I don't think it's anything your listeners would be interested in. Or that I can't, that I'm not allowed to go. Let's put it. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to go, I guess, is the right way of thinking about it.
How about just other recent stories, either from last year? It can be boundary waters, things that stand out as uniquely challenging or rewarding. Some of the calls.
Well, we had a woman commit suicide by jumping off Big Manitou Falls in Pattison Park over in Douglas County, and that was, before Curtain Falls, that was the most complex call in our history. So twice in 1 year we had the most complex call in our history. But imagine a 180-foot gorge, thin ice, swift water, rope rescue, ROV mission from 220 feet above. So the first day we lowered the submarine down on a track line to get it to the troops at the bottom. And we were flying that ROV from the observation deck 200 feet above.
Wow.
And, all of those things coming together, a thin ice call. And we had the canines. Rooster was down in the gorge. We had him brought down there. And, it took us a little over a day to find her. But that was a monster mission.
Wow. Yeah.
But it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't compare to Curtain Falls, but it's just a time thing. We're in there for 2 days, and Curtain Falls was 18.
Yep.
So you got different factors in play there.
You mentioned Rooster, one of the canine dogs. The squad just lost one of the dogs.
We just lost Ike. Ike is he was a British lab, and Ike was, I can say this, he's the finest search dog that's ever come down the pipe. I would put that dog against any in the country. And Ike, he just died of old age. He was worn out. He's almost 15, which for a British lab is a fossilized dinosaur, But
was he still working details or going out ever?
No, he was retired for about a year. He had a great last year of active. He made 3 protracted search finds that were extremely challenging, and Ike made all the difference. And but it's neat. Dave, his handler, before they had to put Ike down, Ike's very last action on the planet was to run a search sortie. So Dave set up a training find for him, and Ike was so happy. I mean, you can tell when these dogs are happy, and Ike just loved it. It made his day, and that's how we sent him off on his final journey.
Wow. And is that very much like losing a human member?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's the equivalent.
And listeners, I'm squinting because the smoke's blowing at me. But
you can.
I ain't moving the
You can get emotional too. You don't have to pretend
no,
it's the smoke.
This is smoke, man.
Yeah.
But
well, you got that magic stick. We can give it a jab if we need to, Rick, if it's getting bad.
The diddle stick.
Yeah.
That's an old Sam Cooke term. Once you get a healthy fire going, you have to diddle with it.
So would Ike have been out like on Jordan Grider looking for bones and
Ike was there.
Ike was there on Grider, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So many of these calls over these last 15 years, if there was a need for a dog, he was probably there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. What a legacy. So that is very much.
Oh yeah, he's a legend.
I mean, clearly like just as valuable, or the loss is felt the same as a member, huh?
Absolutely. And Ike joins Ted, who we lost in November. Ted had bone cancer, and it was really well controlled. And one night just before Thanksgiving, it came back with a vengeance. And within 24 hours, Dave had to put him down. But Ted had some really great finds as well. And now we've got Rooster is Dave's main dog, and then Cairo is a puppy who's coming up through the ranks. He's kind of a teenager now, rattle-headed teenager, you know. And then we've got Mandy and Thunder, which Marcia runs those two dogs. And then Matt Nyland, who's a Duluth firefighter, and his real job has Maverick, that is a German Shepherd. Those are general air scent plus human remains detection. And Rooster and Cairo are simply human remains detection. And then we got Freckles, which is a general air scent dog as well. And Mandy and Thunder and Maverick are also trailing. So they're cross-trained in 3 different disciplines. But Freckles is air scent, and that's, Jenny came to us from the Eastern Seaboard. She had Freckles already doing search and rescue out there, and she moved to Duluth, and we gave Freckles and Jenny a good honest look, and clearly she's ready. And so we've got a robust roster of search canines on the staff.
Yeah. It seems like it's a very valuable part of search and rescue. I mean,
it's a game winner. It's more than a game changer. It's a game winner.
Yeah. When we talk about the loss of a member, in this case a dog, but a member of the squad, but sure other members have come and gone over the years and passed away, and that I think, I don't know for sure, but I would assume back when your dad was around on the squad in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, like the mental health side of how you were doing after something like Curtain Falls might not have been discussed at all amongst the crew. And
well, back in the 70s, you killed the nightmares with a bottle.
Yeah.
Now that's nobody. We don't do that anymore. Thank God for that. But yeah, we have a peer-to-peer program in the squad. It's peer-trained counselors who can work with you. I mean, in fact, tonight's photo of the day that I posted just tonight is of our pizza table at Pike Lake, and there's the stories that table could tell. It's
that's the big table.
That's the big long table. Has our logo on it. Has our mission on it, and but that's probably the best way to decompress, is just being with your friends, being with your coworkers who were a part of it, and brain dumping from there. But then, of course, there's the critical incident diffusing, there's the debriefing, and then anybody on the staff who needs special help, the sheriff's office is contracted with Northland Psychological, and we have 5 free visits to a trained psychologist whenever we need one. Mm-hmm. So mental health has become a very big deal. I mean, I used to have, it's funny how I stopped having nightmares after Debbie died, but years ago, I used to have nightmares 3 days a week. I have ghosts that visit my bed.
From calls?
From calls, and usually it's the ones I can't find.
Like you see the person in these dreams?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, but, yeah, it's, now I mean, eventually you make friends with it, or at least you make peace with it, but sometimes you need outside help to do that, and the structure, the process. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox available to us to keep our mental health in fighting trim.
Is that something that at the conference today in Grand Marais, was that ever a theme or a work session or anything that even you heard mentioned at any point or anything?
I'm drawing a blank on what the agenda was over the past 2 days, but
I'd be curious to know if that was, and maybe it didn't fit in with the purpose of
not this time,
session,
but it has been. I mean, it's a regular topic that comes up in these seminars.
Okay. I've recently lost Cooke County and the radio station here in town, and the hospital lost a valuable community member, Mark Abrahamson. He was on the radio for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy of mine, during the pandemic, him and I were the only people in the radio for about 18 months that were allowed in the building, so to say. And so you grow close to somebody.
Absolutely.
In a situation
You bet.
like that. Mark passed away suddenly and very recently. And one of the things that troubled me as I was writing something about Mark, the first thing that came to mind was, how many times I talked to him about going fishing with him, making half-ass plans or hoping I'd
Oh
do it,
yeah,
one of those
yeah,
things.
and that's the Minnesota way. Is we ought to do lunch sometime, and it's never going to happen.
But I'm tired of that,
Yeah,
Rick.
and I don't like it either.
Yeah. It really troubled me after Mark passed that I never got to go fishing with him. And I hope that you and I don't have that same dilemma in the sense that let's just frickin' go fishing sometime. Rick.
Absolutely, I would love to do that.
It doesn't have to be a podcast. It probably will. Doesn't have to be. I'm just saying it that I want to get out there with you because we don't know what. I mean, as somebody who's living and breathing in this and sees how quickly someone's life can get turned upside down.
Yeah.
And your own experience with that, as I've had too, is that life can take a turn in a minute.
Did for me.
Yeah.
Did for me, and it's. I mean, that's a good take-home point for your listeners. Is don't leave angry. Part company with a hug, a kiss, a prayer, a compliment. Say something nice because it may be the last time you see them. Mm-hmm. And
well, I sure hope this isn't the last time I see you, Rick Slatten.
well, I hope not either. I don't plan on dying anytime soon, and I'm sure you don't either.
And let's get out and do some fishing. I've got a spot in mind. I'd like to take you this paddling season. Let's call it a goal. Let's call it a date, Rick Slatten.
Let's call it a date. All right. We'll call it a date. Yeah.
And thanks as always for chatting with us. Thanks for coming up and spending some time here in Cooke County, out of your St. Louis County zone where I know you're so comfortable. But thanks for being here, Rick, and chatting with us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. These are always a good time. Heck of a fight. What an environment. Man, this is fantastic.